A little homeless girl threw a billionaire's lunch on the ground. And what happened next shocked an entire city. Richard Cole had everything. A private jet, 3 mansions, a company worth $4 billion. He was the kind of man who never had to wait in line, never had to wonder where his next meal was coming from, and never, not once, had to worry about anything. Life was smooth for Richard, too smooth. That Tuesday morning, he was running late for a board meeting and stopped at a small street cart near his office building. He ordered his usual, a hot sandwich, the expensive kind wrapped in foil fresh off the grill. He paid without looking at the price, slipped the sandwich into his coat pocket and started walking, just like any other day. Except it wasn't. That's when he heard it. Sir, please! Don't eat that!" He turned around. Standing a few feet behind him was a little girl, maybe 9, maybe 10 years old. Her shoes were torn. Her jacket was too big for her tiny body. Her hair was messy and her face was dirty. She looked like she hadn't eaten in days. She was staring at his sandwich with big, desperate eyes. Richard sighed. He assumed she was hungry and wanted his food. He almost kept walking, almost. But something about the look on her face stopped him. It wasn't hunger he saw. It was fear. "Don't eat that, sir, please. I saw what they put in it." Richard laughed. Not a kind laugh, a dismissive one, the kind rich people give, when they think someone below them is wasting their time. "Kid, go home," he said. "This is a busy street and I'm a busy man." He unwrapped the sandwich and lifted it to his mouth. "No!" She ran forward and knocked it right out of his hand. The sandwich hit the pavement. Richard stood frozen. Around him, people stopped and stared. A little homeless girl had just slapped food out of a billionaire's hand in the middle of downtown. Security from his building was already moving toward them. Richard was furious. His face went red. He pointed at the girl and said, "Do you have any idea who I am?" She didn't flinch. She just pointed at the sandwich on the ground and said, "Look inside it." Something in her voice made him pause. She wasn't asking for money. She wasn't scared of him. She was serious, dead serious. And against every instinct he had, Richard crouched down, picked up the fallen sandwich and pulled it apart. Inside, wrapped in foil right next to the bread, was a small plastic bag. Inside the bag, white powder. Richard's blood ran cold. He looked up at the girl. She was already backing away, like she was scared of what came next. "Wait," he said. "How did you know?" She hesitated. Then quietly she said, "I saw the man at the cart put it in, the man with the scar on his hand. He did it fast, but I was watching." Richard stood up slowly. His hands were shaking. And this was a man who had closed billion-dollar deals without blinking. He called the police right there on the sidewalk. Within 20 minutes, the street cart was surrounded. The man with the scarred hand tried to run. He didn't get far. What investigators found was bigger than anyone expected. The cart was a front. Richard wasn't the only target. He was one of several high-profile businessmen who had been specifically marked. The powder was a fast-acting substance that caused memory loss and disorientation. The plan was to get him confused, alone, and robbed of information that could cost his company hundreds of millions. All of that, stopped by a little girl with torn shoes. When the detective asked Richard how he found out, he pointed to the girl who was still standing quietly near a lamppost, watching everything unfold. She looked like she expected to be sent away. Instead, Richard walked over to her and crouched down to her level. "What's your name?" he asked. "Sarah," she said. "Where are your parents, Sarah?" She looked at the ground. "I don't have any." Richard was quiet for a moment. Then he asked, "Where do you sleep?" She pointed vaguely down the street, toward an alley covered by a cardboard shelter. That night, Richard did not go to his board meeting. He did not go home to his mansion. He sat with Sarah at a small diner 2 blocks away and bought her the biggest meal on the menu. She ate like she hadn't had a proper meal in weeks, because she hadn't. She told him her story between bites. Her mother had passed away 2 years ago. No relatives, no home. She'd been surviving on scraps and the kindness of strangers. Richard listened to every word. He didn't check his phone once. The next morning, Richard called his personal lawyer, then his accountant, then the director of a children's foundation his company had been funding for years, but that he had never personally visited. He made 3 calls, and by the afternoon, Sarah had a place to stay, a proper children's home with a bed, warm food, and people who would look after her. But Richard didn't stop there. He set up a private education fund in Sarah's name. He visited the children's home the following week. Not for cameras, not for press, but just to check on her. She was sitting at a table doing homework when he walked in. She looked up and smiled. A real smile. The kind that doesn't need anything in return. Richard said later in a private conversation with a close friend that in 40 years of business, no deal had ever made him feel the way that smile did. The story spread. A journalist who had witnessed part of the street incident wrote about it. Within days, the story was everywhere. People couldn't believe it. A homeless child, hungry and invisible to the world. had saved a billionaire's life, and he had actually listened, actually acted. But here's the thing that most people missed when they shared this story online. Sarah didn't help Richard because she expected anything. She didn't know who he was. She didn't know he was worth $4 billion. She just saw something wrong happening to another human being, and she said something, even when she had every reason to keep her head down and stay invisible. She was 9 years old, homeless, hungry, and scared, and she still chose to do the right thing. Now think about how many adults walk past things every day, things that are wrong, things that could hurt someone, and say nothing, because it's not their business, because they're busy, because they don't think it matters. Sarah had nothing, and she still found the courage to speak up. And Richard, a man who had spent his life surrounded by people who told him yes and smiled to his face, finally met someone who told him the truth with nothing to gain from it. That's the thing about kindness. It doesn't care about your bank account or your status or what you look like. It just shows up, sometimes in the smallest, most unexpected places. In a torn jacket, with messy hair, on a busy street corner where no one is paying attention. One little girl saw what no one else did, and because she spoke up, everything changed. For her and for him. Never ignore the quiet voice in the crowd. Sometimes it's the only one telling you the truth.